Week 8 is officially in the books, and it's time to go over some waiver wires. But before we do that, welcome to another episode of the Ivan Herrera Show. In this video, we are going to not only go over players you should be adding, we're going to highlight some of the great performances that we saw this past week, and we're also going to mention 5 players that you need to be adding to improve your rosters as you head into Week 9. Before we do so, though, let's go ahead and recap some of these great performances. The first one being CeeDee Lamb. This guy absolutely killed it in garbage time. Had 13 receptions on 17 targets, caught 146 yards, had 2 touchdowns for a great performance for the Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately in a defeat. However, CeeDee Lamb, of course, putting up a huge monster performance. Week 8 also featured National Tight Ends Day, and boy did they show out. Beginning with Cade Otton, he had 9 receptions on 10 targets for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. We saw Travis Kelce also go off finally for 9 receptions, also on 10 targets for 90 yards and a touchdown. We saw also I believe the captain of tight ends, it feels like, is George Kittle. He got a great performance as well for 6 receptions on 7 targets, 128 yards and 1 touchdown. We saw Kyle Pitts have his first multi-touchdown game of his career with 4 receptions, 5 targets, 91 yards for the Falcons, and of course had those 2 touchdowns as well. And then we saw the great Trey McBride for the Arizona Cardinals have 9 receptions, 11 targets, 124 yards. So great performances all around for the tight ends in week number 8 on National Tight Ends Day. We had 5 tight ends actually finish among the top 15 in overall fantasy football finishes. And to put a bow on the highlights, we saw also Ladd McConkey out of the Los Angeles Chargers put up a 6 reception game on 6 targets for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, as we get ready to go over the players you should be adding, here are the players that you need to be getting rid of to make room on your rosters for these additions that I'm going to be sharing. The first one is going to be Jordan Mason out of the San Francisco 49ers. After filling in for Christian McCaffrey for a couple weeks, we all thought, okay, this was the best handcuff, maybe even a league winner for most leagues, but the magic has faded away. He only had 6 rushes on 18 yards. Also caught was a lone target for 9 yards before leaving the game early due to injury. But even before that, though, he hasn't had an RB finish better than RB 30 since week number 4. And with the lack of productivity with CMC just coming around the corner, there are better options at the running back position that could be better suited than Jordan Mason. Another player with dropping is going to be Jordan Addison from the Minnesota Vikings. He caught 2 of 3 targets for 22 yards. He was the wide receiver 68 and has only had 1 game over 4 targets. And due to the lack of production, if you are in need of an upgrade, Jordan Addison is a player that I am very comfortable with dropping and moving on from. Another one is going to be Tyler Lockett from the Seattle Seahawks. He only had 1 reception on 3 targets, also had a very abysmal 11% target share. He's only had 1 game this season with more than 11 fantasy points in PPR formats with the emergence of JSN, and of course you still got DK Metcalf there. Even with Metcalf hurt, I'd still look for someone else other than Tyler Lockett, being that he has not been producing in 2024. Now, this next player I wasn't high on because of the team and his aging, but it's going to be Keenan Allen. Yes, he had 7 targets, but he only had 2 receptions, had a total of 39 yards, and he's also only had 1 game where he was a top 10 wide receiver. He has had 4 games where he has been wide receiver 57 or worse. So Keenan Allen, someone that is just going to be filling up a roster spot that you do not need. So Keenan Allen is someone that you can go ahead and feel comfortable dropping. And then another bonus one because of injury is going to be Christian Kirk. He unfortunately suffered a collarbone injury that will sit him out for the rest of the season, and he of course is someone that you can also drop as well. Hey, before I go over the players you should be adding, do me a solid. Most of you aren't subscribed, so go ahead and take a quick pause, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll go over the players you should be adding. And this first player is going to be Keon Coleman. I already went over this guy last week. He's currently still only rostered in 57.8% of ESPN leagues, had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown. He had a season high 21.9% target share, and over the last 2 weeks he's had 9 receptions for 195 yards and a touchdown. Week 9 though is going to be a tough matchup because he is going to be facing the Miami Dolphins, who actually allow the fewest points to opposing wide receivers. But Keon Coleman, with the increased target share and of course with the highlight plays, someone definitely worth adding on your rosters. And someone else I'm going to breeze through real quick because he was in my previous video last week is going to be Cedric Tillman. He's still only rostered in only 16% of ESPN leagues, and someone that I highly recommend putting a waiver claim for. He caught 7 receptions on 9 targets and 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. There's this great tweet here from JJ Zacharyson that shares how Cedric Tillman has had target shares of 25% and 22% in the last 2 games since Amari Cooper's departure. He's now had a total of 47 PPR points, and he is someone that is worth definitely adding despite the tough matchup that he has coming up versus the Los Angeles Chargers, who actually allowed the second fewest points to opposing wide receivers. Now, this next player that I'm going to actually recommend to you is going to be Parker Washington from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We unfortunately saw that Christian Kirk is going to be out for the remainder of the season because of a broken collarbone, and with all the uncertainty with Brian Thomas Jr., I believe that he's still worth adding because of the lack of targets that will be available to wide receivers. I would strongly recommend to also tread carefully. Even though Philadelphia has allowed the 11th most points to opposing wide receivers, we are seeing that secondary improve slowly as the season has gone on. However, in week number 10, he is facing a very favorable matchup when he faces the Minnesota Vikings, who actually allow the most points to opposing wide receivers. Cade Otton is also another player worth adding, considering that he's still only rostered in 58.6% of ESPN rosters. He had 9 receptions on 10 targets, had also 1 touchdown. Otton is now coming off his second straight game with 10 targets, and he also has a really favorable matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs, who actually allow the second most points to opposing tight ends. And this last player that I'm going to be recommending is going to be quarterback Bo Nix from the Denver Broncos. He's only rostered in 36.7% of ESPN leagues. He had 284 passing yards with 3 touchdowns and also rushed for a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games. He has actually had 20 plus fantasy performances, and he's also in those 4 games has had either 2 games with 1 touchdown or 2 separate games with 60 plus rushing yards. Of course, now just showcasing the great upside that he's able to provide because of his running ability. And it also helps that he's going to be facing the Baltimore Ravens in week 9, who actually allow the 3rd most points to opposing quarterbacks. Hey, you've been into the very end of this video. Do me a solid. If you found value in it, hit that like and subscribe button, and be sure to check out some of these other videos here in the channel as well that'll help you out with your fantasy rosters. And until next time, take care. God bless. Peace.